Hi, folks. As Arnold Schwarzenegger would say, I'm back. I promised you that we'd follow up on the second part of the real estate. It's going to be shorter than the first, but I just want to basically hone in and show you that you're not helpless. There are things that we can do if you'll just stand up. And I want you to think about this. I'm going to do a second show today, and it's going to be revolving around what's happening worldwide with what happened with Charlie. This is the time with what Trump is doing and what happened with Turning Point USA. Your voice can be amplified. We need an avalanche of people to stand up. And when we do, one of the things we're going to be able to do is solve this problem for you for the real estate so that Carl Schwab will not be able to say, you will own nothing and be happy, because you would be miserable. So this is the time. If you'll stand up, we can change the things that are binding you in the chains of slavery. And to my mind, one of the biggest things is owning a home. When I was young, we were poor. My father was an alcoholic and a gambler. We never owned a home. So he left me as the primary supporter of my family, and I had to go out and work my butt off, and I saved money and I bought my mother a house. So she had never owned a home until I bought her one when I was really still fairly young. I started working at 12 years of age, and by 19 I had saved enough money that I bought her a house. So there we are. So I know what it's like to live in an apartment. I know what it's like to live in a ghetto. I know what it's like not to be able to go outside of your house because you're afraid. So we're talking about giving a generation of people that the powers to be are trying to say, you'll never own a home. You'll never have a place to raise your children. They'll never have a piece of grass to go out into. They'll never have a neighborhood to be in, because, I know firsthand, when you live in an apartment complex or when you live in a ghetto, it's not like living out in the suburbs where you've got a nice yard, where you've got good schools, where you've got a community. Rental properties are transient, and it changes the entire complexion of your living conditions. So what we're going to be talking about is how in the world can we beat the global conglomerates that are trying to keep you from ever owning a home. And with that, there's a world of psychological things that come. You come home with the pride of ownership of your own home. You can say, well, my child wants my room painted pink, and you can do it. And I want to put a playground out in back, and I don't have to ask for permission. It changes your world. You can get involved in a church. You can get involved in community. So we're going to be talking about more than just real estate. We're going to be talking about giving you the life that I know you'd really like to have for your family. And we're going to be talking about basically you standing up and saying, if enough of us stand up, we are many, they are few, we will win. Now is the time. And as Charlie Kirk named his organization, it was perfect. Turning Point USA. We've reached that point. So with that, let's get into this presentation and get back to the topic at hand, which is real estate and allowing you to own your own home. So ownership is the American dream, and they're trying to take it back from you. Why is it so important? Because it's the basis of family, of community, and of everything we hold dear. You take that away, and look what it does. It affects. So now they've got us not only where we can't buy a house because they're putting out a set of circumstances that preclude that, but holding you in the chains of slavery does more. So you're wanting to buy a house. Well, I bought my first house at 19. That was a different time in this world. Now, the average family who can actually buy a house is buying it at 39 years of age. By 39, you should be married and you should have a kid that's 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old. They're holding up and causing a whole generation of people to do what I call failure to launch. They're in their family's basement at 20, at 25, and even at 30 and 35. That's decimating to society. That means they can't go out and really pursue a relationship. It means they can't get married. It means they can't start their family. It means that to them, the world is a drudgery. We're going to solve that problem. We're going to create a situation where if you will join our army, We will create a situation where we take down the giant of oppression, and you can have the opportunities that I had when I was 19 years of age. I bought my first house, and you want to know how much it was? You ready for this? $17,500. You know what it was? It was an all brick home. It was 10 rooms. It was a duplex. It was an income property. My mother and I lived in one side and we rented the other side out. And you know what it created? It created a revenue stream. So then I was in a position that I could leave and go start my own family, and she could stay there. And the revenue from the other side of the house paid for that for her for the rest of her life. So that property never cost her a penny. I paid the taxes, which you can imagine were pretty low, and she never had to make a mortgage payment the rest of her life. We can be creative. I'm going to do some more shows on real estate, and I'm going to tell you, this is the topic that I'm uniquely qualified to talk about. So let me give you my credentials as we get ready to go into this. So starting as a senior in high school, I got the opportunity of a lifetime. I got to work building skyscrapers. I was making, doesn't sound like much now, but I was making about $8 an hour. But that was when the average, the minimum wage was $2. So that's where I was able to save up the money to buy that house. That's another thing we're going to address in coming documentaries is how are we going to change the structure so that the money that you have is valuable. I'll tell you how we're going to do it. Right now, houses are priced out, but I'm going to tell you when we get to the right slide, how if you help me fight for your freedom, you're going to be able to go back to a point in time when you can have the dream that I had. You can buy a house in your youth, and you can go out and pursue a relationship and find a wife and start a family while you're still young. That future can be yours, but you're going to have to stand up. And why I'm excited right now is God told me, you're going to be clipping the cleft of the rock until your hair is salt and pepper. Well, look, it is. And right now, I think with what just happened, unfortunately, with Charlie and what happened with getting Donald Trump back in, we now have an opportunity. If you will stand up, the Generation Zs and the millennials, and you will join together and you will fight, we will be able to give you a new freedom. So let's go on deeper into what is happening. So the story is, that dream that you had has been shattered, but we're going to give it back to you. But you need to know what's being done to you. So this slide represents the essence of the American dream in totality. We came from Europe here because in Europe we were serfs. And what is a serf? A serf is basically someone who has no rights. The king and the nobles control everything. They have no right to own any land at all. They're taxed into poverty, the exact situation we have right now. And they had a name for them. They called us chattel. And what is the definition of chattel? It is personal property, just like that ox that you see in that picture. That's what they consider us to be. We're just chattel. We're slaves. We're economic slaves. We're gonna free ourselves. We are a modern day chattel, no more. Not a single American. This is something I want you to realize. I want this to be a rallying point. Not a single American in the entire country, or for that matter, and probably most of the world, actually really owns a home. We're actually right now renters, but they're going to make it even worse. Why are we renters? Oh yeah, we get to have a house and we get to call it ours and we get to have a yard for our kids, or at least some of us do, but now we're going to get it to where most everybody does. But the reality is they control the economic system, and all they have to do is to orchestrate a planned financial collapse, where they basically, let's take '08, where they lower the interest rates, suck people into buying houses, and they can buy it with no money down on an arm that they know is going to revalue in 3 years, and their mortgage payments are going to double or triple. And then millions of people will lose their homes, lose the dream that they had, lose the money that they put into it, and be out homeless. I mean, we're not going to allow that to happen again. We're going to step in and we're going to save this generation. We're going to give you hope, and we're going to give you a future, but you're going to have to stand up and participate. Let's go to the next slide, if you would. This should be a shocker. This is related. Look at that picture in the middle, that little jagged thing you see, that's COVID. And that was no accident. COVID was patented, and it was designed to lock us down and to completely change everything. It was to control an election. It was to control you. It was to print more money than had ever been printed before. And to do what? That created the situation that you see in front of us, because they inflated, because we printed in the period of that lockdown more money than the United States of America had printed in the previous 100 years. And this picture is what it resulted in. It resulted in you being able to buy a house for 3% down. And the average price as we went into COVID was $200,000. Now, that's a far cry from the $17,500 house I bought in the 70s. So what's happened now, just a few years later, now that same house, you notice that's the same exact picture, is now at a 7% interest rate, and it's $400,000. It's doubled. So who out there could basically save enough money to be able to buy a house in that environment? And is anybody going to sell? Not unless they're absolutely in distress, because here's the situation. They're locking you out of the existing home market, and they're locking you out of the new construction market. And I'm going to tell you, and you better stand up, because if you don't, I mean, the conglomerate that I'm talking about, BlackRock and Warren Buffett and Bill Gates, etc., are conspiring against you to see that you never own a home and you just are slaves for the rest of your lives. We're going to break it. So when we're looking at resales, here's what happens. Let's assume this is you and you want to move. Can you afford to sell your house that you got a 3% mortgage on and that you bought for $200,000 and go out and buy a new house for $400,000 with a 7% mortgage? You can't. You're stuck. You're frozen. They've given you no options. We're going to change that. We're going to completely get around that. If you'll stand up, we will break this chain of slavery that you're looking at. Let's go to the next slide. And basically what they're doing is this looks a conglomerate. I want to take you back in history. Remember, I always go back to history. And what you're seeing there, which that map, that globe of the world, that's the corporatocracy. That's all the corporations that have combined not to represent you, but to represent the global financial elite and to make money. I spent 22 years in corporate America, and I worked for some Fortune 500 companies and for some startup companies. And I can tell you that generally speaking, there was no humanity in the boardrooms of those corporations. They wanted money, period. And they didn't care what it did to you, the American people. So Abraham Lincoln said this. He said, I fear for my nation. I fear for what I see coming. And what I see coming is the merger of the banks and the corporations. And when they get together, they will have so much power that they will once again enslave the people of the United States of America. Folks, that's exactly what has happened. But when I had my near-death experience in 1968, God said, I'll hold you in the cleft of the rock until the last moment, until the moment when people are ready to listen, to the moment that people are desperate enough that they're willing to stand up. We're at that moment of desperation. We're at the moment where we have two leaders. We have Charlie Kirk, who basically is an inspiration and then made him a martyr. His platform is going to be bigger than it ever was under his wife. And now we have Donald Trump to orchestrate all the things that we need orchestrated in order to change the laws that we need changed. And in order to do something else, God told me the truth would set us free. So when we find out the elections coming forward are going to disclose how and why you're in the position you're in, why you cannot buy a house. And when we find that out, we're going to be able to crush the corporations and take the power back. If you bring that slide up to full screen, I'm going to try to read some of that, if you don't mind. All right, so I'm going to go through this and read it. Basically, this is what the corporation is doing to you. Wages perpetually lag behind the cost of living. So what that means is when we have productivity gains, which we certainly have with the computer and with AI and with automation, your salaries should go up. and up and up and up. And we should not have this situation where inflation goes up and up and up and the cost of things go up, but your salary lags way, way, way behind. We're going to change that. There's perpetual shortages of starter homes, and that's not by accident. So that takes us to the second part of the real estate market. The first is the existing homes, and people just simply can't afford to sell them. They can't afford to sell a house where they got a 3% mortgage and buy one they've got a 7% mortgage. So basically, they're controlling us. That's on purpose. Now, when we get down to the new construction, what they're doing is even more heinous, but it should wake you up. They are building tons of new homes, but yet there are massive shortages where that you can't go out and buy a house. You need to understand what they're doing to you. I used to sell to Polton and Near, and they made a lot of homes for first-time home buyers, and they're still building a lot of homes for first-time renters. Here's what's happened. They've joined forces with the BlackRocks and with the Bill Gates, and they're building thousands of homes that are the right size for first-time home buyers, 1,400 square feet, it's the sweet spot. But they're coming on the market as entire subdivisions, and not a one of them is for sale. They're rentals. They're changing the situation to where you're a perpetual slave. And then once you get in there, they have AI that scrubs all the data, and they decide where they want to go, where the sweet spot is, where they can force you into rentership. They're not going to the high-end market because those people, they're never going to be renters. They're going to what they call the sweet spot where they can force you into rentership, and then they're going to be able to do all the mathematical calculations using AI to know exactly how much they can raise your rent each and every year and keep you in that slavery system forever. And the first-time home buyers are priced out and forced to be what? Perpetual renters, raising your family, if you're lucky enough to ever get married where you have no home. And home buyers, listen to this. Listen to what they're doing to you. You go in and you want to put in an offer on a house, you're done. You haven't got a prayer in most instances, because if they have targeted the market that you're trying to buy into, they want to raise the prices so that they can make sure nobody can afford to buy a house there. So they're putting out offers. They basically have software. I remember now, I was a real estate agent. I was a real estate broker. I eventually owned my own real estate firm. So before you see that for sale sign go on the market, the MLS has already been notified several days earlier while they're getting everything queued up. They're in there, zip, with their software, and they're making an offer on that house before it ever gets to the market. So a lot of the houses that would come on the market never make it. And when they buy it, they're buying that house for 50 or 60% above asking. And it doesn't hurt them one bit because they're not getting a mortgage. They're paying cash. And their overall goal is to drive up the price in that market niche that they're targeting so that it will be a rental community, period. And let's go on down. So every month that you save, guess what happens? You fall further and further behind. Let's look at the savings account when they're giving you 1%, and when inflation is 4% or 5% or 6% or 8%, the same thing's happening in the housing community. They've got you locked in to where you can't ever get ahead. It's all going to change. The corporate slave masters are going to be exposed, and when they're exposed, we're going to take them down. And the key to it here is Donald Trump is going to basically show that the elections were stolen. And when that happens, we're going to find out that we have people in positions of power that don't belong there. We're going to see 90% of our politicians removed. Go back to last year, to 2024, 180 CEOs resigned. Now, wait a minute. I'm just a reasonable guy, but I got a little bit of sense. I'm a CEO and I'm making $1 million, $5 million, $10 million, believe me, 20 million. So I'll make that much and more. I'm not ever going to resign. I'm going to milk that cow until the day I die. So they're being forced out. And the banks are going to fail. So here's an opportunity that's on the table for you millennials, for you Generation Zs. Stop whining about the fact that the degree that you got isn't getting you a job. Start thinking creatively. Start thinking about entrepreneurship. Start thinking about how you can find the cheese that's been moved and create opportunities for yourself. It's going to come. So here's what's going to happen: massive, massive openings in the banking industry, in the corporate arena, and also, excuse me, in the political arena. So start to think about the career that you could fill. We need Christian conservatives to come in and fill those positions. Your future doesn't have to be dim and dismal. Think out of the box. Don't let them control the narrative. Now is the time for us to stand up. And if we stand up, we can take these blanks out, and you can have a freedom to have a family and to get married and to have a child. So it all revolves, I think, around ownership. Why? Because it is the American dream, and that's what we should be striving for. And if we get that in place, everything else will fall in place. Boy, let's go on to the next slide. I basically ranted on that one. So here's another thing that they're doing to you. Just think about it. Look at that sign. Sold 131,000 over asking price. So can you do that? No, you cannot, because when you're buying a house, you're buying a 30-year debt obligation. When they buy a house, they're buying an opportunity. Look at that picture over on the right, to create a rental environment where they will have a 30 or 40, 50-year revenue stream, and it doesn't make any difference to them. They have no risk, because if the market crashes and you lose your job, you lose your home. But if the market crashes on a development that they own, it's paid for. They can ride it out for as long as they need to ride it out. You see what they're doing to us? They're basically putting us in a situation where we are controlled by debt. And because they have cash, they're untouchable. But if we take their corporations away, if we take their money away, we take their power away, and we can change the laws that have been passed that have enslaved us and set this situation up. There's never been a time in the history of this country where it was so ripe for the people to stand up and to take it back. And I want to go back to America and back to India, and I want to show you the simple equation for what we do. We fought the American Revolutionary War, and we got our freedom. We became the Republic. We became the United States of America. But before Washington was out of office, the war had driven us into bankruptcy, and we had to take on the Central Bank of England, which was the principal reason we fought the war in the first place. Now, by contrast, what did India do? India rallied around Gandhi, who was a lawyer and a spiritual leader, and he said, let's do this. Let's boycott England. And when we do, we'll financially crush them and we'll get our freedom. And by golly, they did. And what did America do in another era? We were under the central bank, and they had inflicted us with a civil war, and we went bankrupt again, because wars bankrupt nations. But we didn't just sit and do nothing. We did what Donald Trump is doing right now. We said, hey, England, we're going to put a 50% tariff on you, and our people are not going to be able to buy your goods. That forced the innovation that became the Industrial Revolution. We're sitting on that opportunity right now. There's some 600,000 patents out there that Donald Trump, in his first term, got a Supreme Court decision on that says we can get access to those. So we are sitting on what is going to be the greatest industrial technological revolution the world has ever seen. And if you'll just stand up, we can take this back, and productivity will surge through the roof. We'll get free energy. We'll get control of all the necessities of life, and we will be able to go back. Are you ready for this? Back to 1971 prices, when America was based on a gold-backed system, because that's part of what Trump is going to do. So off the top of my head, let me see if I can scrunch up a couple of statistics for you. Now, in 1971, when we went off the gold standard, the average home in America cost $23,000. That slide I showed you where the houses went, same house, from 200 to 400,000 wasn't because that house was worth any more. It was because the dollar was worth less because it was a fiat currency, and the Ponzi pyramid scheme was collapsing because the confidence in the dollar was collapsing. But when we go into the system that Trump is orchestrating now, driven by tariffs, driven by crypto, driven by Bitcoin, driven by stable coins that will retain the value of the dollar, backed by gold now, we will be able to go back to 1971 prices. At least that is my analysis. And that means that 400,000 average price today is probably going to be somewhere around $40,000, not $400,000. Now you have an opportunity to have a completely new world. Now you can do what my generation did. You can afford to buy a house and have money left over, and buy a new car and have money left for a vacation. And if you want to be a one family, a one income earning family, you can have the ability to do that. But it's going to require one thing: get off your butt. Stop feeling sorry for yourself. Stand up, become active, get politically involved, push. And I guarantee you, we are at a point that if we put a stake in the ground, they are weaker than they have ever been. We'll bring them crashing down, and all the things that I'm alluding to will no longer be false promises. They'll be your new reality. So the future, your future, and the future of your family and your dreams rest on you standing up and becoming politically active. We have to find out that the elections have been stolen, and then we have to come in and we have to say we're going to get those people out. They're not there. They don't belong there. And then in the subsequent weeks that lead up to this election, I'm going to be going back into history, and I'm going to be compiling a list of all the things that need to be changed in order that we can get rid of all of the laws that were passed by the corrupt politicians that were not designed to help you, but were designed instead to enslave you, to create a legal dictatorship. But I'm telling you right now, this is the one moment in time that God has orchestrated. You don't want to miss it, because if you do, you will be slaves, and you will never own a home, and you will be serfs for the rest of your life. Stand up, Generation Z, stand up, millennials. Now is the time. God has ordained it, and you're going to be able to get back the life that I had when I was young, the life where I felt free. I could have money. I could go out to dinner. I could do anything I wanted to do. I could go on a vacation. That future rests for you if you'll stand up. Let's go to the next slide. So basically, here's where I'm going to have to leave this one up big, because I'm just going to read this whole thing. What can be done to make the housing affordable for the Generation Zs and for the millennials? Here it is. I'm just going to read it, folks. Just bear with me. Financial reset with gold-backed dollar. That'll change everything. That allows us to go back to where we were in the 1970s. Low interest rates. And what's Trump doing there? He's basically killing the Fed and taking us under the Treasury, which is where we were when we were first formed as a nation. We weren't under the Federal Reserve System. There was no Federal Reserve. They could not, by law, tax our income. So now all that money is going to come rolling out, and we're going to be under the Treasury system and be able to go back to what we had when we were a nation. We didn't have federal income tax and all this myriad of other taxes. We had a simple flat tax. That's what Trump is going to bring. And now let's go on down. Break up the conglomerates. And that's basically going to happen when we find out what they've done. First, we release the truth about the stolen elections. And then, oh my goodness gracious, what happens when you find out what the pharmaceutical companies have done to us? When we find out the lies that the media has done? When we find out the manipulation that the banking systems has done? If we stand up united, millions of us against a few power-mongering, insane, whatever you want to call them, will win. We will win. We will convert the power equation and take it away from them and take it to us. And then here's some concrete things that we can do in order to give you that dream of an American home. So what's this next one say? Modify zoning restrictions. Well, what's that mean? It means that 82% of the population in the United States lives in a tiny little 2% of the land mass. And because of that, it spells high density living. And so it means that a very small proportion of any new construction within a major metropolitan area is what? Multifamily, high rises. So this gives you something to think about. I was in real estate. I'm going to do some follow-up shows to tell you and educate you how you can buy a house. Let me ask you a question. Do you make money? Do you make money when you buy a house, or do you make money when you sell a house? That's a trick question. You make money when you buy the house, because if you buy the wrong house in the first place, you're not going to make any money when you sell it. So I'm going to actually do some shows to teach you how to buy houses. And we are now in a situation to change that dynamic where you're trapped in the metropolitan area where they're not building any single family homes for you. Because now guess what happened with COVID? Everything they do backfires on them. So now we're not going back to those big corporate, to those big high rises when we have the financial collapse that's coming, and it is going to be catastrophic. Here's what's going to happen. They're going to have the greatest real estate collapse in the history of the entire world in the commercial market, because unbelievable numbers of high-rise apartments are basically vacant. Basically, those commercial properties don't have tenants that are in there. They're 50% occupancy because what? People are allowed to work out of their houses. Now, some of them are coming back, but it's not 5 days a week. It's maybe 2 days a week. Those people have moved. They've moved out to the smaller cities. The opportunity for you to do that is going to exist. So you're not going to be trapped in that metropolitan megapolis where you, even if you own an apartment, you still don't have a yard. You still are trapped. And there's going to be a plan. I'm going to lay it out for you how you can move out to the suburbs and you can have the American dream at an affordable price. And then Trump can come in and he can use his power and he can basically put tariff relief on the building materials that's driving up the cost of houses, giving you some aid, and then incentives for smaller home builders. So basically, we're up against the giant home builders that are in collusion with the corporatocracy that wants to control us. But he can give incentives to smaller builders, build homes for first-time home buyers, sweet point 1,400 square feet, and make it and put something in the clause. This house is for sale only, not for a rental. And we can start to create a market where you actually can go out and find a home that you can afford to buy. And government-sponsored reclamation projects. So now we're going to go back to the cities and let's look at what Donald Trump did with such genius and what Elon Musk did. They used the system. They bought properties, especially Trump, that were in trouble. And that's what I did when I had my real estate holdings. Basically, find a problem and solve it. So let's go to Detroit. Here's what can be done. Donald Trump, we can amass a mass of people to go to Donald Trump to put pressure on him to help us. And we can go to the cities as cooperative groups and we can say, what's it doing you any good to have those dying factories sitting in Detroit and all those houses sitting there turning to rot? How about you sell us that property for, I don't know, maybe $1, I don't know, but very, very cheap so that we can get into the city and we can get in there without paying extravagant prices. And then let's bulldoze all that land and come in and build conventional factories. Donald Trump is bringing in $10 trillion to build factories. Let's drop factories back in Detroit, back into the Rust Belt so that we can create the American dream all over again. And then now we build those single family homes around that factory. He wants to beef up the American auto industry, do it in Detroit. And then we'll build single families at home around those factories and we'll create community even within the big cities. There are multiple ways we can skin this cat and we can deliver the American dream back to you. And then now let's go on. New planned communities with tech and manufacturing. So now we're going to go out and fix the sweet spots out on the peripheries. And we're going to say, we're going to do exactly what they're doing. They're building planned communities for rental only. Now, if we get investors and the corporations fall and the money shifts and the transfer of wealth comes from the wicked to the righteous, we can go in and supplant them, crush them financially, take their money away, you take their power away. Now we build planned communities and we put within it, we put in it the ability to have agriculture. Let's do high-rise ag centers where we're growing our food in 5-story hydroponic factories. Let's put in green spaces for kids to play in. The parks. I used to live in Naperville, and it was one of the most amazing places in the world because there was not one spot within that whole community where you were more than 1 mile from a park. Let's plan around building communities for our families and our children and bring people back together, and we'll change the entire complexion of the world. And basically, another law we can pass is something they're doing in other nations. It's called first look legislation. So right now, I told you that before that house ever goes on the market, the corporate conglomerates have bought it. But we can pass first look legislation that says, hey, you know what? We get first right of refusal. We get 30 days. That house has to sit on the market for 30 days where we, the first-time home buyers, have an opportunity to buy it before the bad guys get in, and then we can ban lobbyists. So now this is going to take us into the arena of political action, because your answer to get your freedom back, to get your American dream, is going to revolve around political action. And that's where I'm going to be doing shows and telling you exactly what we need to push legislatively to make the American dream possible. It can be possible. Look at that picture down below. We can change everything. That's a family. That's a community where once or twice a year they have a block party where you have kids that your kids are going to grow up with, where you're going to grow up and have everything you need right there, all orchestrated around the nucleus family, which they have been trying to tear down and destroy. It was Stalin who said, if we can get control of the family, of patriotism and the Christian values, we will crush America from within, because they knew that we were too strong to be crushed from without. If you'll just stand up, we'll take it back and you will get the freedom that you want. Let's go to the next slide, please. This is where Donald Trump is coming in. This is where God has given us the leader. He has said himself, we have to have parity. Parity with what? Parity with every nation around the world. Economic parity, where we can revalue the currencies of all the nations. So the first world nations, I've done shows on, their currency is going to devalue. And that has benefits to them, whether you believe it or not, because when their currencies are lower, they're more competitive in the world trade. And all the second world nations, they're actually incredibly wealthy, because we're going to be able to give them the natural resources. We're going to give them the infrastructure to be able to get access to their natural resources, and we'll have parity, and that means we'll have peace in the world. We'll have mutual respect, and we here's the key right now. Here's what you have. We have the ability at this moment in time. Don't miss this train. It ain't coming back. We have the ability to stand united, and together we will rise and we will get our freedom back. The key to peace and prosperity is parity within the world. We have to learn that we have to love our brothers and sisters, because when we take advantage of them, ultimately it comes back and we all lose. Let's go to the next slide, if you would, please. This is the essence of what God wants. This is the world. So when Jesus was asked, Master, when this follower is asking, what's the most important thing in the Bible? He said, to love thy Lord thy God with all your heart and with all your soul. And then they ask, what is the second? To love thy neighbor as thyself. When we do anything that harms our neighbor, we harm our community, we harm ourselves, we bring everything that we put out that is not brotherly love back to us in something that hurts us. God's divine plan for his children is for us to love our neighbors as we love ourselves. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you, and you will find out that all of the slavery that we are under will dissolve, and all the problems of the world will go away. We're going to be able to join forces. We're going to be able to pool money from nations around the world, because everybody will have enough. And you know what we're going to be able to do? Forget about all that green movement crap that they're pouring out on you. It's all a bunch of lies. We're going to be able to pool money and pool resources and pool technology, and we can clean up our oceans. We can clean up our air, and we can have technological innovation that'll blow your mind. And we will be able to go into our version of utopia, not the global financial elite's version of utopia. I think the next slide is the last one, if you'll go to that. And this is what I've been waiting for. When I put this book out, God said, put it out, put it out. There'll be some who will listen, but it will not be really the time where the people's eyes are open, but you'll be able to lay a foundation. This book tells you everything you need to know. It's all the history that was supposed to be in your schools. It tells you what made America great. It tells you how over decades they have divided us, and that's the key. We have to stand united, and they have enslaved us. It tells you how they've taken it away from us, how we're going to get it back. I'm sorry, I kind of got the hiccups there, and how we keep it. So now that we have the time where the armies are forming, you will not win this battle unless you know what made us great in the first place. I know we're in a generation where people don't like to buy books. I wrote this at a 6th grade level. It's a fast read. And in one single chapter, I've gotten comments that say, oh my God, Larry, when I got to that chapter, I don't know what chapter it was. He said in one 20-page chapter, you gave us the entire history of the United States of America. And in another chapter, you told us everything we need to know in order to get back the freedoms that we've lost. This book is a fast read ordained by God, and now is the time that you need to read it, because I'm telling you, you need to get politically involved, and you need to know who the slave masters are and how they've enslaved us, because if you do not have knowledge, we will not win this. And if you do not stand up by the millions, we will not win this. And if you do not get informed, so what are we? I'm going to go back to our foundation. We were the great experiment, the very first nation ever founded as a republic. We are not and never have been a democracy, at least not according to our Constitution. Our founders called democracy mobocracy because they knew that the very first instant that people figured out they could get money from the corporate treasury, we would eventually go bankrupt, and that's exactly what they've done and exactly where we are. So what is a republic? I bet you most of you don't know. A republic is a government of the people, by the people, for the people, and it has a very specific set of requirements in order to work. It has to have a nation that is united, all the people standing together for the benefit of all others. It requires that you be educated. That's why the first thing our founders did was they founded Harvard. You needed to be able to read. You need to have what? A religious foundation. You need to have a family. You need to be self-reliant, not dependent on the government, and you needed to be informed. So they had pamphleteers that gave us the truth, not the lying media that we have. And when we had some government that came against us, we gave ourselves the right to have arms. And when we were actually in the war, our religious leaders were not muffled by 501Cs, and they stood up and formed the Black Robe Regiment and went out with their constituents, and they created a small army that was, I can't think of the word I want right now, rebels. And basically what they did is they disrupted the supply chains. And without that, we would almost certainly have lost the war. You cannot fight a war when you do not have supplies. So folks, we just need to come back, and you need to understand, it's right in that book. Everything that made America great is in that book. You need to understand all the things I just said about understanding what a republic is. And then this is what you do. We go out and we vote. Donald Trump is going to see to it that by the midterms, we have honest elections. He's either going to put us on blockchain that will protect the election system or on a paperback system. And then you need to be informed as to all the various things that you need to be voting for in order to get your freedom. And thank goodness that Donald Trump, through his son Barron, got to the Generation Z and the millennials, and they stood up and won that election for him. And now we need you to come out in even greater numbers, and we need you to get involved. We need you to get prepared. So when these collapses coming, and there are openings at the local and the state and the federal level that cry for people that are Christians, that are educated, they're young people that are willing to fight for the people. You're there ready to go as an army, ready to fill those vacuums. That's the future that is at the door right now, right this very minute. And either you take advantage of it or you'll be slaves for the rest of your life. Buy that book. get informed, get active in the political arena, stand up, and I guarantee you, you will see an America rise that will lead the world into a period of unbelievable prosperity. But it depends on you. It all starts with America. We have to heal America, make America financially the leader of the world again, and then we can help the rest of the world, just like we did in the Industrial Revolution. We invented the assembly line, the automobile, the railroad, and we shared all that technology with the rest of the world. Nobody, no other nation in the world can do what America can do. You don't want the reins of power in a communist Russia or a communist China. You want it in a republic led by informed people who are going to vote and do what is best for all of the people of the world. So when you go to the voting booth in the midterms, here's what you're voting for. The big picture is you're voting not for entitlements. You're voting for all of those things that are going to be beneficial to everybody. So basically, then the whole of humanity rises and we get back our freedom. I know this has been about more than just real estate, but I want to give you the American dream, home ownership. And the only way you're going to get it is if you get politically involved and you stand united and you fight like you've never fought. And you believe that now is the time, now is the moment, the only moment that we've had in my lifetime where we can seize power and we can get our government back and we can get our family back and we can get a life that is worth living. I thank you for joining us. We're going to be doing another show today, and it's going to be revolving around what happened with the assassination of Charlie Kirk, and it ties very closely to what we've just discussed. Please come back and join us later today for another episode. Thank you, and amen.